You do not need to fix anything right now. You do not need to understand what is happening, name it, or trace it back to a memory. Healing does not begin with effort. It begins the moment your system senses that it is safe enough to stop bracing. That moment is quieter than you expect. It does not announce itself. It arrives as a small release, a softening you might notice only after it has already begun. Most people imagine healing as something that moves toward them with force, as an intervention, a breakthrough, a moment that changes everything at once. But real healing moves differently. It approaches slowly, waiting for permission. Not conscious permission, but bodily permission. When your breath slows without you telling it to. When your shoulders drop a little on their own. When nothing is demanding your attention for just long enough. You are not being asked to believe in anything. Belief requires tension. It requires the mind to hold a position. Healing does not ask for that. It asks for allowance. Allowance is simpler. It is the absence of interference. It is what happens when you stop trying to hold yourself together and discover that you do not fall apart. At this stage, healing does not touch the past. It does not open wounds or bring images forward. It does not ask you to revisit anything. That comes later, if it comes at all. Right now, healing is working at a more basic level. It is teaching your nervous system that this moment is not dangerous, that nothing is required of you, that rest is permitted. You may notice a subtle relief, almost disappointing in how ordinary it feels. No rush of emotion, no sudden clarity, just a sense that something has loosened. This is not nothing. This is the foundation. A body that feels even slightly safer begins to reorganize itself. Muscles release, breath deepens. The inner alarm quiets. Healing starts there, not in insight, but in safety. There is often a reflex to ask whether this is enough, whether you are doing it correctly, whether healing should feel more dramatic. These questions come from habit, not from truth. You have learned to associate value with intensity. Healing does not follow that rule. It values sustainability. It moves at the pace that allows it to stay. Nothing is being taken away from you in this moment. No identity, no story, no strength. What softens is effort. The effort of staying alert. The effort of managing yourself. The effort of holding everything in place. When that effort eases, even slightly, healing recognizes the opening. This is why nothing needs to be fixed right now. Fixing implies that something is broken. Healing does not begin with that assumption. It begins with the recognition that something has been carrying too much for too long. And that recognition is gentle. It does not judge. It does not rush to correct. It simply allows rest. You may feel tempted to protect this softness, to hold on to it so it does not disappear. That impulse is understandable, but unnecessary. Healing does not need protection. It needs space. And space is created by not tightening again, by letting the breath stay slow, by letting the moment remain unforced. At this first stage, your only role is to not interrupt. You do not need to guide the process. You do not need to encourage it. Healing is not fragile. It has been waiting for exactly this condition, a moment where nothing is demanded, where safety is felt rather than explained. If all you notice is a small sense of ease, that is enough. If all that changes is that you are not trying so hard, that is enough. Healing does not rush in, because rushing would recreate the very tension it is meant to ease. It arrives when it is allowed. An allowance has already begun. As you stay with this softness, the idea of what a wound is begins to change. A wound here is not only pain or memory. It is fatigue. It is the long effort of holding yourself together, staying functional, staying composed, staying alert. Much of what hurts now is not sharp. It is heavy. Healing notices that weight first. For a long time, strength may have meant not letting go, staying upright, staying capable. But the body does not interpret strength the same way the mind does. For the body, constant holding is strain. Constant readiness is exhaustion. Healing begins when the system realizes it no longer has to prove anything, when it is allowed to rest without consequence. This does not mean the past disappears. Nothing is erased. What changes is the grip the past has on the present. Memories may still exist, but they no longer pull as tightly. They sit a little farther away. Not denied, not avoided, simply no longer in control. That distance is not disconnection. It is regulation. At this stage, your body is learning something new. It is learning that it does not have to stay guarded all the time. This learning does not happen through logic. It happens through experience. Each slow breath teaches it. Each moment of lowered tension reinforces it. Gradually, the system shifts from protection into repair. Healing here is not about reducing symptoms as quickly as possible. It is about reducing effort. The effort of managing emotions. The effort of anticipating outcomes. The effort of being prepared for impact. When that effort softens, healing is already underway, even if nothing dramatic is changed. You might notice that the urge to control begins to fade. Not completely, but enough to create space. A voice that says, "I must handle this," grows quieter. In its place is a more permissive awareness. This can be held without force. That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. At times, allowing this may feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. Letting go can trigger the fear of falling apart. But as you allow a little more, you notice that collapse does not follow. Instead, there is stability. A different kind of stability. One that comes from balance rather than tension. Here, emotions are no longer problems to solve. They are signals that can move through. When a feeling arises, there is less urgency to fix it or explain it. You allow it to exist without tightening around it. And when emotions are allowed, they do not stay stuck. They complete their movement and pass. Healing does not teach you techniques at this stage. It does not give instructions. It simply creates the conditions where your system can do what it already knows how to do. Restore, regulate, settle. You do not direct this process. You stop interrupting it. You may notice a gentler inner voice emerging. Less judgment, less pressure, less demand. This change matters more than it appears to. Many wounds are sustained not by events, but by the way you learn to speak to yourself afterward. As that internal tone softens, healing deepens. There is no timeline to measure here. Healing does not progress because you want it to. It progresses because resistance continues to decrease. Each moment you do not tighten again, the learning reinforces itself. The body remembers safety faster than the mind expects. At this point, healing is no longer something that might happen later. It is happening now, quietly, incrementally, without spectacle. Your role remains simple. Do not rush it. Do not test it. Do not demand proof. Allow the system to continue learning that it is permitted to rest. This is enough. At this final stage, you may begin to sense that healing does not need to be carried or protected. Once it is allowed, it finds its own place. It settles quietly, without asking for attention. You do not need to check on it or make sure it stays. What arrives through allowance remains through integration. Nothing about your life needs to pause for this. Daily movement continues. Conversations happen. Tasks remain. Yet something underneath feels softer. You respond with less tension. You pause more naturally. You notice that situations which once tightened your body now pass with less impact. This is how healing shows itself when it is real. It does not announce change. It alters tone. You may realize that the fear of losing this state has faded. That fear belonged to effort. Healing that comes through allowance does not depend on effort, so it does not disappear when attention moves elsewhere. It becomes part of how your system operates. A new baseline replaces the old one, not suddenly, but steadily. This kind of healing does not make you fragile. It makes you flexible. Flexibility is the ability to move with experience instead of bracing against it. You bend without breaking. You feel without being overwhelmed. You rest without guilt. These shifts do not require explanation. They simply function. There is no need to define what has happened. Naming it is optional. Healing is not a concept to hold on to. It is a condition that expresses itself through ease, through the absence of urgency, through the quiet confidence that you can meet what comes without tightening first. You might notice that your relationship with discomfort has changed. When tension arises, it no longer feels like a threat. It feels like a signal that can be listened to. This listening does not mean analysis. It means presence. And presence allows resolution to happen naturally. The most important realization here is that healing does not need repetition to stay alive. You do not have to return to this moment intentionally. You do not have to recreate the conditions. Your system remembers what safety feels like now. And memory at this level is not intellectual. It is embodied. Nothing dramatic follows this stage, and that is the sign that it has worked. Healing that integrates does not demand continuation. It allows life to resume with less friction. You carry on, but you are carrying less. If there is a sentence that fits this moment, it is simple. I am allowed to be at ease, not because everything is resolved, but because you no longer need to hold yourself together so tightly. You do not need to guard this ease. You do not need to fear its loss. Healing that arrives through allowance stays through trust. And trust, once learned by the body, does not vanish. The moment does not end. It blends into the rest of your day, quietly, naturally. And from here, that quiet becomes enough.